Hello, I'm Catherine Risky, and I'm reading Dreamer in the Falls, pages 61 through 66. A row of biomechanical sewing machines line a path of conveyor belt made of skin. Fetus sac bobbins feed thread through two-headed rod guides whose tails are necks and necks are tails. Needles eat the threads and push their heavy-willed purpose to the tip that penetrates the flesh of the conveyor belt walkway, like hammers on meat. Torm can hear the rubbery skin stretching as the flesh is fed to the machines, while blades cut off the excess skin as it forms into a long, thin path. Bruises are sucked dry by large mosquitoes, and pus is sucked out of any infected skin by long, beaked pus suckers. Torm has a vision come to her mind when she touches some of the skin. A giant flow of bloody mud and frantic people suffering from full-body scalping. Snowflakes of blood fall into the flow as their voices cry out like kids and make the most eerie, unnatural sounds. Torm is released from the vision when she stops touching the skin. She stands on the conveyor belt and rides it at the stitching speed it dictates. She smells cologne of rotting meat and machine oil as the conveyor belt takes her past the large moving parts of the sewing machine. The moving, flesh-like aisle brings her to a web of pregnant nerves where machines gather embryos from fetus sacs. The embryos are ground into paste as their little souls escape, but are immediately collected by a black iron cup. Her horror at the sight is muted by her desire to find her sister. She walks over the bridge of skin, ignoring the suffering as best as her kind heart will let her. Soon she finds herself on a narrow path with no referenceable walls to gauge distance. Only a featureless black void that tests the accuracy of her equilibrium. Occasionally she passes a blooming blood flower that strangely makes her feel balanced. A while goes by before she comes to pillars made from the carcass of a bone flower worm. They form a sort of rib cage around the path, hugging it like a banister. The air tastes medically sweet, not a pharmaceutical flavor, but more biologically sweet than anything. She avoids tasting it, breathing as little as possible, but as the walk is long, this proves difficult. Soon, a film builds up in her mouth from the air and she is chewing chunks of the disturbing atmosphere. This foul tartar makes her teeth ache, like a child who's had too much candy. She reaches the end of the path and is met by a boatman guarding a small channel dock. He has a large head, shaped like a black starfish, with a golden skull and oxygen mask. The way he stands obscures the true shape of his body, but suggests a dominating height. A set of root teeth hang from wooden key box pole next to the boatman. A series of dirty, empty jars are on the tube poles that connect to the boatman's body. Their use was obvious to her. The root teeth are used to indulge self-purging and fed to the jars. "Torm, help me!" Her sister's voice suddenly pleads in the distance. Feeling a rush to help her sister, Torm eats a tooth and vomits in the jars of the boatman. He accepts this payment and backs into the water like a crab in retrograde, disappearing under for a moment, then bringing up a platform. When Torm gets on the platform, she's savagely held in place by organic spikes that penetrate her skin, finding their way into her organs. The spikes keep her organs from failing by sealing off any blood that could run away and by giving nutrients to their tissues. The boatman's head forms the front of the boat dock, and his long legs open up 15 feet under him. A water wheel reveals itself as his walk pulls everything forward. Under the narrow channel is a wall of white cloth figures, vacuumed under framed sheets trying to free themselves. The channel opens up into a large river cave with worm-bone rafters that are filled with tortured people. The bloody water of the river refuses to mix with the clear waters of the channel as the boatman walks the platform into it. The river has a tar skin scabbing its surface and is full of frantic bodies desperately trying to get out of the creature-filled currents. Clusters of bodies have formed boats to swim away but are quickly eaten by tar worms. Torm closes her eyes, but a large, long, organic machine arm, whose fingertips are biomechanical wasps with sewing machine heads, stitch her eyes open. Torm feels no pain, and for some reason, this made sense to her. Torm sees her reflection in the river, but doesn't recognize herself, just seeing a hallucinogenic caricature with a face pulling off like a melting candle. Mechanically tapeworms made of metal and cloth patrol the air, using their jaws made of sticky cloth and iron mesh. They trap anyone trying to escape. She notices the strange walk of those on the banks of the river, a stop-go animation whose key frames randomly jump on its own timeline, confusing any predictable position. They are eaten by blooming reverse fabric traps, made into cocoons, and then placed onto a drying line. The boat comes to the end of the river and docks. A machine pulls the threads out of her eyelids. A vomit mask refeeds her the currency from the boatman's jars, and the spikes retreat from her organs and skin. They leave no marks, and no pain was ever felt. Torm steps onto the dock, and instantly her memory of the insane ride is erased. 2 rows of burnt-skinned demons line the side of the long, dirty dock. Chains welded to their footless, skinless kneecaps anchor them to the ground, keeping them from floating away to heaven. Torm walked this hall of demons until she met a hard, mean wall. Bones dig into the wall like rotting teeth on a dying animal and form a ladder higher than she's able to see. The valor to climb the wall was challenging, but by the brittle, fickle bones that would break unannounced in her hands and under her feet. After 2 hours of climbing and nearly falling to her death 100 times, the wall's fragile rungs ran out. Unable to climb up or down, she froze in panic on the wall with eyes squeezed shut. Her mind was blank as her body prayed for help. A rusty clanking from darkness crawls in behind her, and she opens her eyes and sees 2 demons with chains coming out of their mouths and heads locked upwards, their bodies rigged together by pieces of iron. Before she could introduce herself to the bizarre situation of the chain eaters, the bones she stood on broke. She went seeking safety into the arms of the 2 hanging demons. With no place to stand, they kept her from falling by penetrating her ribs with 2 hummingbird beak-shaped rods. The rods penetrated her lungs, and with every breath, the demons ate up 6 feet of chain. Torm would need to keep breathing to climb. She managed 56 breaths before becoming uncontrollably lightheaded. A large metal and cloth ironfish silently floats in behind her, offering reprieve from its long, clothy. And to find out more, please read Dreamer in the Falls, available on Amazon.